from. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Sorry, I just realized I didn't put myself on the stage. Sorry, I'm running a minute late. I just wrapped up a call. But if you could let me know where you're coming from, I'd love to know that. Share your name in the chat. And we'll get started here in just a minute. I appreciate you waiting for me. I apologize again for being a minute late. I just wrapped up a call. And so what we're going to do today is I thought I do this every few months. The second time I've done this, where I call it Ask Me Anything. I'll open up Excel. You guys can ask any questions you want. There's a problem you're facing, a situation where you're like, I'd love to know how this formula works, or what would you do here? Can't promise I'll always immediately know an answer. Sometimes it's, fairly complex, but this session is really going to be for you. And you're going to just have that opportunity to ask some questions. So, maybe you want to ask me a little bit about Power Query, a certain formula, a challenge you're having. I'll open up Excel and kind of walk through and share some things. And so we have some people out there. We got Carla in Chicago. We got Kamal joining us, I think in Ohio, if I remember right. And I'm sure we have some others. So let me know where you're calling in from, and we'll see who's the first brave soul to ask a question. So this is going to be fairly informal today. And so everybody's aware, in addition to kind of the Q&A style today, I have about 15 sessions I've done of these. They're available on YouTube. You can go out and watch them, covering many sections from Power Query to dynamic arrays, sequence function, choose columns, group by, pivot by, tables, pivot tables, a number of different subjects. I also do some of these in my community, the FP&A Hub, which is absolutely free to anyone who wants to join, the FPAHub.com. Welcome, Awayas from Pakistan. And so great. Keep letting me know where you're come from. I think we have about 10, maybe 10, 12 people out there. And if somebody would go ahead and ask a question, if we don't get any, I may just start showing some of the new functions in Excel, not so much functions, but just some of the new things, functions and other stuff. And so I'll give it a couple minutes, see if anyone has questions or something they want to ask me. If not, I'll just start working through some stuff that I think people will find interesting in Excel, and we'll go from there. So if you have a question, please let me know. And I might tell an Excel joke while we're waiting, or maybe I'll do an FP&A joke. Does anyone know how to describe an FP&A professional's job to somebody? I find the easiest way to explain an FP&A job to someone is it's 80% cleaning data and 20% complaining about the data you have to clean. All right, we got a question here from Carla. I'm going to throw this up on the screen so everybody can see it. There's so much to know in Excel, and I'm very comfortable looking things up when I haven't used a function or feature. But I don't know how to prepare for technical job interviews. How to prepare when I don't know what will be tested. What is considered expert, advanced, intermediate. And I don't want to learn VBA. Seems that there is no need thanks to AI. So, Carla, it's a great question. So I think for technical job interviews, there's a couple different things. Some people will ask you questions about formulas, and you kind of have to do the best you can. I think most people, what they'll do is a lot of companies will do some kind of test. And I think there's two different areas here. There's the Excel test where they ask you a bunch of questions and you fill them out. I hate those because they're going to want you to do it a certain way. And sometimes there's another way, but you can't do it in the test. And it's like, I remember taking one of those and scoring pretty low, even though I knew like 90% of the stuff that was in there, it's either the way they asked it or did it. So on those, outside of just the, knowing shortcuts, knowing the basics, it's a little bit of hit and miss in the sense of they may want you to do something a very certain way and you don't know. And then there's the second one where they're giving you some kind of case. What I tend to find the technical cases is they're really more about analysis and wanting to see your thinking. Like, hey, build me a revenue forecast in 2 hours. And they may know you may be able to never finish the assignment or analyze this data set. They're more looking at how are you thinking about things? How are you approaching things? And do you have a basic understanding of Excel? I don't think you need to relearn VBA. I'm 100% with you. Frankly, I rarely use VBA. I've had others write it throughout my career. I've written a little bit. I've cleaned macros. I've used AI for it. You can use AI for a lot of it. The way I think about it, and this is what I would do if I'm in a technical interview, if they ask specific questions, I do my best to answer them. But when someone asks, how good are you in Excel? I like to tell them, look, I am effective in Excel. And here's what I mean. So it's not, I'm advanced, I'm intermediate, I'm a beginner. What does that even mean? It's all subjective. I like to say an FP&A person is effective in Excel if they can use it to automate and streamline processes, analyze data, and provide value to the business. So the way I like to think of it is, can we use Excel as a tool to make us effective at our job? That's where I always try to focus when it comes to that type of thing. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, if that's helpful, but those are some of my thoughts, Carla. From here, I'll go. Anyone else? Let me know if you have a question. If not, like I said, I'll open up Excel and we'll walk through some things. I'll show some of the new stuff out there, and we'll go from there. So I'll give it one more minute to see if any other questions come in. All right. Well, we're waiting to see if any questions come in. I'll open up Excel here. And I'm going to start by just opening up a file here to be able to show something. So let me share my screen. And forgive me, I got 2 screens. So if I'm looking away, it's because I'm working on 2 different screens and the camera only is on one. All right. So a few new things Excel's added over the last few years that might be lesser known. First one, this one's fairly new, is what's called the focus cell. If you have focus cell on, it's really easy to see where you are in the grid. Sometimes you lose your cursor. So this is a new tool. You can change the color, to whatever color you want for your focus cell. But you have the ability to kind of track. It doesn't work within text boxes, but within the grid, you can easily track where you're at. So that's one thing. I believe that's in general release now. I don't think it's still in beta. I'm pretty sure it's in general release. All right, so that one's not there yet. Next one I want to show, if we go back to view, I'm going to turn off focus cells. The next thing is the navigation pane. I'd love to know, is anyone using the navigation pane, or have they used it? If you have, just put it in the chat. This is the next one that's fairly helpful. So if I click navigation pane, notice what it brought up here. And I'm hoping everybody can see that okay. But on the right-hand side here, it brought up every single one of the worksheets in the workbook, and then what's in each of those sheets. So if I click on valuation sensitivity, I can see, oh, there's something in B2. If I click on it, it takes me to that worksheet. I could go up to B2. There, I have freeze pane on, so let me turn that off real quick. I've come up here to B2. You can see that's standalone. There's nothing around it. So it shows, hey, you got something in B2. Then it shows you have continuous data in this range. If I have a text box, it's going to show text box. If I have a graph, it's going to tell me it's a graph. And so I can see I can navigate my entire workbook. I can change names. I can delete a sheet. I can hide a sheet, all from the navigation pane. I can also search. So I could say chart and search. There's no charts in here, so it's not going to find it. If I type in Tesla, it's going to find, each of the worksheets that have the word Tesla, which is quite a few in this one. So the navigation pane is really helpful to work and move around a workbook. The one thing I would love for them to add is the ability to right click here and add comments right in your navigation pane. So, kind of some instructions or things related to table of content, description of what may be on a workbook that people should be aware of. So that's a relatively new thing. If you're using it, like I said, let me know in the chat. I'd love to know if you are. And feel free to keep the questions coming. A few other things that you may not have noticed. So the first is, if you right click now in Excel, there's this search the menus. So if I say insert, it's going to bring up all the insert options: insert sheet columns, insert picture, insert sheet rows, insert object. Let's say if I click on it, it performs the operation. So, I like to use the Alt shortcut, so I don't use this much. But if you're a mouse person and you can't remember where something is on your menu, but you want to do it, you could just type it in, like pivot table. You can see what comes up. Formatting. Okay, format cells, format painter. So you can type in anything, new window. Right? If I click that, it created a new window. And so you have the search. In addition to that, and this works better online, you have show change. And so you can go through, let's say I look at, let me pick a sheet. I know I made a bunch of changes to this one. So this sheet right here, this practice sheet, you can see 2 hours ago, I did this formula, I did this, and you can see a list of all the changes and who made them. What I will say is I find in general, the online does a little better job of tracking and is more complete, but you now have that ability to show changes. I'm going to close this workbook and open a blank Excel workbook. So give me 1 second here. All right. So that's another one. A few others that I like. Let's go next within Power Query now. You have, let's see. You can pull stuff from a picture in the desktop version. So let's just, if I do something like this right here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to make it a picture. Oops, I did the wrong one. I meant to do, can I do picture here? I don't think I can. Yeah, okay. So what I'll do is I'm just going to snip it so I can create a picture real quick so you can see this. So, you have a receipt. You have a whatever, something you want to bring it in. So I brought this in. Here's my picture. I can click on this picture. I can come up to data. I can say from picture, picture from clipboard. So if I copy this to the clipboard, copy it. Hey, picture from clipboard. What it's going to do, it's going to analyze the image and try to tell me what all the numbers are. You can see it got the 1, it got the 2, it got the 4, the 5, the 6. For whatever reason, it didn't get that one right. And it highlights it saying we struggled with that one. I'm not sure why it did. Could be the grid lines or the, fact that I had the dancing ants around it, had a hard time reading it. But I can do that. And then I say insert data. and it will bring in that image right into the grid. So that's new to, relatively new to desktop Excel. They've had it on mobile for a while, but they added it to desktop. So that's another one that's new that could be helpful. Let's see. And feel free, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Love to see any that may come through. You know, a couple other things that are relatively new. One, you can now insert a picture into a cell. So you can place it over a cell, or you can actually insert it into a cell. So if I take a stock image, just to keep it simple, that now lives inside the cell. Right? If I drag that, you can see it got bigger. And you can see Copilot kind of shows up there saying, hey, we'll give you some options. So you can now put those in a cell. There is also a formula now called image. If I could type, image is relatively new, where I can reference the source of a picture from the internet and bring it straight in. So I'll just go out, find a picture from the internet. Give me 1 minute. So what I'll do is copy image link, and I can insert the image link right here. And it didn't like that image link. Usually it will work. I may have to try a different image. For some reason, it didn't like that one. But you can copy image links, and it will bring in the image for you. You know, like say, you know, Wikipedia or whatever. So that's another potential thing you can do. I'm going to try one more here. Copy image link is what I'll do. And I think I know what the issue is. If I remember, I think I need to put quotes around it. Yeah, there we go. So I put quotes around it, and there you can see this is an image I just pulled off the internet. And so that's another fairly recent thing. Probably not something we're going to use a ton, but it has its uses where it can come in handy. Carla, yeah, Focus Cell is very new. That one's only a couple months old, Carla, so I'm not surprised you weren't aware of that. That's one of the newest ones. I think they just barely brought that out of beta. You know, the other that's really helpful, if people aren't familiar with them, this is something Google's had for a long time, is you now have the ability to insert checkboxes. I don't want the entire column. Let's just say I just want these 10. And what's nice with the checkboxes is if you set something equal, you know, to these, when you check it, it becomes true. When you uncheck it, it's false. So you could use that with graphs for data, you know, to create checklists and conditional formatting. It's much easier than having to go to the developer ribbon and using, you know, some kind of form control or ActiveX. So that's probably in the last year that they've added that. And you'll see there's a lot of videos on how you could use it out there. Next one, I'm going to let me pull up a data set. So give me a minute. Let me think. Give me just 1 second to pull up some data, and I'll show another one here. For this one, I need a data set. So all right. So what I want to show here is I have my data here in a table and I want to analyze it. I could ask Copilot, but let's just say I don't have Copilot. So I'm going to assume in this case you don't have Copilot. You want to analyze the data, kind of quick and dirty, get some ideas, but you don't want to have to put it in a pivot table and do all the work yourself. There's a thing in Excel called Analyze Data. So I'm going to just click somewhere here in my table and click Analyze Data. What's going to happen is Excel's going to run analysis for us. Right here, we can ask the data a question. It gives some suggested, like how many different brand names are there, total quantity. Next, let me just click off that. It's going to have some suggested questions. Then it's going to have some insights saying, hey, we did cost and quantity by product name. And you can tell it, is this helpful? Yes or no? Yes, no. Quantity by product category is a chart. It says, hey, these two have noticeably higher prices, so we've treated them different. This is an outlier we saw. I don't know why they do donut charts. I don't find those very helpful, but okay. And you can keep seeing, if you click show all, there's like 40 different things. And if I like any of these, so let's say I like the first one, I can insert it and it puts it on a new sheet as a pivot table. Or if I click on this one, insert a pivot chart, it gave me the table and the chart. Richie, on which tab is the check boxes? So the check boxes is on the, sorry, we'll go back real quick. I just saw that. Took a minute for it to come through. So he was asking on which tab is the check boxes. The check box is on your insert ribbon, right under controls. I would agree. Focus cell can be helpful for extensive tables, ton of data. It can be helpful. I haven't found myself using it, but I don't do near as much data analysis as I used to do. I do a lot more, kind of training and different things. So I don't get the opportunity to use it as much, but that's what you were referring to there. And there may be a little bit of delay. All right. Where did you press for this analyze action? I'll do it again so you can see it. So go to your data set. In this case, it's going to be right here, this raw data tab, wherever it may be. Go to it. And under the home ribbon, next to Copilot, there is analyze data. And so I could ask it, what product generated the most revenue? I'm not sure what it will say, but we'll just see. So it gave me the sum of price. It didn't take price times quantity because I said revenue. So you can see it's good, but it's not smart enough. Like if I ask Copilot, I probably would get an answer. Like I could tell Copilot. And so that's kind of the difference between analyze and fine. Turn on autosave. All right. I got to save it because somehow it recovered something. So let me just save it real quick. There we go. All right. So let's take Copilot as an example. All right. That just died on me. So let me try reopening real quick. Sorry about that. The joys of being live in Excel. All right. So like I said, you have the analyze button right here. Next to it, you have Copilot. I tried to ask it about revenue, but with Copilot, I could say something like, create a formula calculating revenue on the raw data tab using price and quantity, and put it in a pivot table showing the largest to smallest revenue by product type. And we'll see how it does. I gave it 2 instructions, so it may not get both of them. But if I want quick and dirty, I just want some analysis, get some trends, I'm going to use analyze data. If I'm asking more specific questions, I may want it to do some work, I would go to Copilot. Now, if I didn't have Copilot, I could always explain it to Chat GPT, and you could probably still get there. See, I got an error. I probably would need to chunk that out. That's the joy of this. I'm guessing if I told it, take column G times H, and in column, K, create the revenue. Then as the next step, I said, put it in a pivot table and just walked it through step by step. It probably gets it right. But in fact, we'll just do just the one. Please create a column K, taking the quantity and price in column G and H and multiplying them by each other. Name the column revenue within the table. And we'll see. Any other questions from people? Like, is there any kind of formula you've been running about or things you want to see? And so, right, it's saying, here's what the formula should be. You want to insert that new column. I click insert column, and there it created revenue, which is quantity times price. You can see it right there. Now, in this case, honestly, it would have been quicker to just do that myself, right? If I hit undo, that really didn't save me any time. I can quickly write revenue equals quantity times price myself. But there are other cases where it can save you a lot of time the more complex it gets. All right. A few other kind of newer things. Some of you may be familiar with this, some may not. So I'll show it real quick. One thing I can find helpful from times is these data types. So let's say, if anyone knows, the stock market has had a rough week, right? We've all probably seen it. So I'm going to go look at a stock out here, get a ticker for a stock. So I'm on my phone. Let's see how Apple's perform. So if I type AAPL, I come up here and click stock. Notice it does this question mark, and it gives me a data selector. It says, hey, do you want Apple Inc. from the NASDAQ, Apple Inc. from this market here, the SIX Swiss Exchange, the Warsaw? Probably want the NASDAQ stock market. All right. So I'm going to say select. And now I have this data type. What you're going to notice is this data type is like a card. It has a kind of like a card. It stores all this data within the data type, and I can bring any of these out. So I want to see the 52-week high. You'll notice it said, hey, B3 time dot 52-week high. Over here, I could do, I could add more. I could come over here and type B3 equals, I could even write a formula, B3 dot, and now it gives me the list of everything available for that data type. I want 52-week low. I can do formulas between them to, if I wanted. Okay, what's the growth rate, right? I could divide this minus 1. All right, 58% from the high to the low. That's how much it's grown if that was the start and end of the year. And so, I could do the low, high, where its headquarters located, all kinds of information, what the current price is. The current price is 220, kind of right in the middle between the high and low. How many shares are outstanding? And you can refresh this whenever you want. So there are different data types. There's stock, there's currencies, there's geography. So say, I'm from Salt Lake City. Click geography, and it's going to ask. And once it's done that, same type of thing. It gives me a card with a bunch of information. Similar to here. You got the card with the information, and then you also have the ability to bring data into your grid. And if you put it in a table, you can kind of automate it. So data types, you can even create your own organizational data types in Power Query. You can bring in ones from Power BI. That's relatively new. That's been out a while, but that's another kind of new thing that you'll see out there. All right. I'm probably going to go through maybe a couple kind of formulas here. We got another 20, 25 minutes, but I'll give it a minute. Anyone have any specific questions that they want me to cover? So I'll give a minute here, see if I get any questions to come through, and I'll tell an Excel joke or two. All right. Let's see. What happens when a bar chart works out? Does anyone know what happens when a bar chart works out? It becomes stacked. So it's a stacked bar chart. I never promised they would be good jokes. Let's do one more. Why did the spreadsheet hate his job? Too many functions. All right. So let's show a couple of the new functions. And maybe we'll start with, let's say, for whatever reason, I have table 1 here, and I have table 2 here. In this example, I'm going to have it be the same data, but assume it's different data. It could be years, month, whatever. In Excel now, I can use what's called the VStack formula, and I can combine these sources together. And now I basically have one table, and if I add something to them, so let's add something here, new row. Notice I now have new row. And so if you had multiple different sheets and you wanted to stack them together on one sheet, yeah, you could use Power Query. There's other ways to do that. But that's a relatively new formula. You could stack it with the vertical stack. There's also an H stack. As you start working with other formulas, there's some really cool things you can do with stacking. Let's see some others. Has anyone used group by yet? Group by or pivot by? So let's do a group by. We'll start there. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say equals group by. This formula has, like if I click right here, you have row fields, values, function, field headers, total depth. You got about, I think, 9 different arguments. So there's a lot to it. It can get pretty complex, but let's walk through the basics. It can be really simple to quite complex. So group by, what row do I want to group by? Row fields. So let's group by this here. My values are going to be quantity. And I want to sum it. So I'm just going to do sum, close it. And notice right there, it just did a group by of my data. Before, I could have wrote a unique formula or put it in a pivot table, but here I can group it. Now, if we go through the rest of the arguments, let's see a couple more arguments. So what they do. After sum, It says filled headers. Do you have them? No, yes, but don't show. No, but generate. Yes, and show. So let's put a 3. And I did not have headers, it looks like, because I didn't select the header. So let's go back to my raw data here and make sure I select the header. So we'll redo this to include the header right there. And we'll redo this to include the header. Now I have the header. And now you can see the header comes in. Next one is, do you want totals? Yes or no? I'm going to say no totals. Or I can show totals. Yeah, I have the option to show grand totals at top. So you can see now total is my first row. It lets me to quickly select, hey, do I want it on top or bottom? And so let's see what else. What order do I want to sort it in? So that's an option. And then there's the filter array and field relationship. We won't jump into those right now. But what I also want to show is, let's say I want to group this by multiple columns. I could select the first 2 columns and group them together. And so now it gives me brand name and product category. So you could see here for Milwaukee, for Hoover, I have multiple categories. So that's where product by can be really helpful. Well, let's, and then as you start to learn more and more, there's a lot of other things you can do. You could have multiple categories here. You could do sum and average, and you can have different, groupings here. So that's the group by function. I'm curious, has anyone used the group by function? Let me know in the chat. Have any of you used it? All right, let's see if I can think of a joke while we're waiting. What does a statistician look for in a spouse? So new for you, thank you for sharing. So a statistician looks for a normal distribution in a spouse. All right, so we covered a group by. There's also a formula called pivot by. So instead of creating it via a pivot table, you can create it in Excel. The big difference is you have row fields and you have column fields. So let's say I want brand name to be my row. I want month to be my columns. Then I want my values to be, we'll say I want all 3. Oh, right. I got to tell it what I want to do with those. Let's say I want the max. So see, now I just created a pivot table. Now I got to fix the formatting. It doesn't do that automatically. But you can see I didn't put labels in here. So one of these is going to be price, cost, etc. You could see all 3. Now I could go into this further and kind of start cleaning it up. All right. What do I want next? Do I want field headers? Yes. So I'll show them. Do I want totals? We'll say no. Row sort order. Do I want a certain sort order? And so I can start making all kinds of changes. Unfortunately, it lost my formatting because I added a new row. So now I can see, oh, there's quantity price. There's quantity price and cost by month. And you can continue to play with it and set it up many different ways. You can even, column depth. Do I want grand totals? No totals. We'll just say no totals here. Do I want a certain column sort order? Do I want to filter a certain thing? And so you got about 9 or 10 different options where you can go through and do a pivot table. Now, the benefit of this over a regular pivot table using the formula, let's say I add a new category. So let's just say I add Dell. I don't have to refresh it. Dell automatically shows up. If I put a number here, we're going to make them, I don't know, whatever. And we'll put it as 1, 1. So it shows up at the beginning. You can see it shows up there. And, we have that filter function. So I can filter it to be just a certain month. And so group by and pivot by are both helpful for when you want more flexibility. You want it to update right away. You maybe, don't want to use a sum ifs and a unique and create your own kind of a version of group by. So those are a couple new functions. Another one that's very new, I have not used it hardly at all yet. I'm still trying to learn it. It's still on my list is there are now what are called reg expressions. So reg extract, reg replace, regex test. And so you can put complex strings, like can be really helpful with phone numbers and emails, replacing and fixing and finding things. It goes a lot deeper than just a find and a replace or a substitute. There's, in fact, let me just go out on the web here so you can see what I'm talking about real quick. If you type in reg expressions, if anyone's used them, they've been available in Google Sheets for a while. There are all kinds of, let's see, right here. So regular expressions. There's things like question marks and dollar signs and ways you can test wildcards and all kinds of different things you can test with reg expressions. Like, hey, is there a phone number in here? And so there's an entire reg expression library. This is probably a better, let's see. I was hoping to find the just kind of list of the different codes for them, but because that's the biggest thing is you have to learn, okay, what's the dollar sign mean? What's this mean? What's that mean? But once you learn them, you can replace really easy. Like, hey, if a date's using something weird that you've never seen before in multiple places or a phone number or whatever, you can replace it. You can test it all with reg expressions. So encourage you to just kind of look at that a little bit. There's a good video. If you go out to YouTube, this is the one I was learning from. I have a worksheet I've started working on. Dim early reg expressions. There's a right here, regex 101. Get started with regex. So if you watch that, ton you can learn. Pretty amazing what you can do. So we're about 15 minutes left. I'm going to open it up, see if there's any more questions from anyone. If there's not, we'll probably wrap up a little early today. But I thought, like I said, about once, twice a year, a couple times a year, I try to do this. Just kind of ask me anything and just kind of off the cuff to give people an opportunity to ask any questions. So is there a formula? Is there a situation you're trying to figure out? I'm going to keep it open for about 3 more minutes here to let anyone ask some questions. If I don't get any, we'll go ahead and close a little early and give everybody a few minutes of their day back. So let me know if you have any questions. And while I'm waiting questions, I'll show one more thing. We'll give another minute or two to make sure nothing comes through. I think this one is available. There is also now a translate formula where you can reference certain text and tell it what the source language is and what the target language should be. So you could take something from English and translate it to Spanish as an example. So that's one other that's relatively new. They took that from Google Sheets. All right. So, if I put something here, hello, hola, red, right? So it can translate it. Have I worked with the new Python features? I have a little bit, not as much as I'd like. I have played with them a little bit. So if you come in here and search Python under, let me go here, not there. Let's see. Yeah, right here. If you go new, there's a Python and Excel tutorial that should be a template. I'm going to go ahead and create, and it will walk through some of the basics. So become familiar with Python. You use py. It walks you through editing, how cell references work, how you can use Power Query with it, and a number of different things. Some of the errors, what libraries are available, how to create a plot. So I've done all this before. It even gives you some useful shortcuts. And then it will reference you to a LinkedIn Learning course if you want to take it. And there's a help article. So this is an entry-level Python and Excel course that if you have access to premium, you could take from LinkedIn. Oops, sorry there. Let me bring my screen back. All right. So there's an example there of a little bit around Python. Like I said, I've mostly just played with it. Like the other day, I tried to create a forecast with it using Copilot. So Copilot's pretty good with Python in the new version in Copilot 2. Any other questions? You're welcome, Christina. I hope that is helpful. Also, if you want to learn more about Copilot, Christian Martinez, not Copilot, I mean Python in Excel and how to use it. Christian Martinez, I believe, has some courses. He's really, really good on it. Owen Price is somebody I'd recommend following on LinkedIn. He works for Anaconda, which is the company that Microsoft used for Python. So Anaconda is the one who brings it all in, and he manages the Excel Anaconda relationship. So he shares tips almost every day around Python. Some of his stuff is a little more technical, but good place to look at. All right. I think we'll call that a wrap, but just so everybody knows, if you're interested in some Excel training, I offer it on my website, thefpnaguy.com. Also, for those who may be interested, I'll share one other thing. So first, let me just show you my website here. This is the little bit of a sales moment. So hope you don't mind, but if you come to the FP&A guy, you'll find my courses, best practice, FP&A courses. There's some stuff about certificates. Some of it's still being updated, but I do have my modern Excel course here. If you use the term webinar, you can get 30% off, and other courses, as well as for anyone that follows me for FP&A, we now have a community called the FP&A Hub. It's the FPAHub.com. It's absolutely free. You just need to register. There's a really quick onboarding course that will take you 5 minutes, and you can join. Right now, we have over 1,100 members in the community. So feel free to join there. There's a lot of great resources and conversations, events, etc. All right. And with that, I think I'll let everybody go. But if you have any questions, you're always welcome to email me. And thank you for joining.